Hello everyone, welcome back. Today, so excited to show you this. This is a rule set of Age of Sail Naval Wargaming. It's by the folks that do General Quarters, the Old Dominion Game Works, and it's called Post Captain. And it's really good. So I wanted to share this with you, kind of the ongoing, rules and things. Let me see if I get rid of some of that glare. When I move that around, the glare goes here and there and everywhere. But okay, but then that makes it dark on my side. So anyway, just put it with some glare because that's just the binder. As soon as I open this up, glare should mostly go away. All right. Now, first thing I want to point out is that when you buy the physical edition, this is a binder, 3-hole punch binder that you get, loose leaf. So just, go to Walmart or someplace and pick up a 1-inch binder, and that will hold everything. And I think that's important to point out because I did read this on a forum. Someone complained that this was difficult to read because of the loose leaf, and that they kept, misplacing papers and stuff. And it was like, just in case you aren't aware, this is meant to be put in some kind of binder to hold it all together. And I think that's fine, because then you get the holy grail of being able to lay your rules flat. So just be aware, when they say loose leaf and 3-hole punch, this is standard 8.5 by 11. It's not A4 European compatible, so just be aware of that too if you get this overseas. This is like the standard US 8.5 by 11 with 3-hole to that. So just in case that matters too. But just be aware, 3-hole punch. Now, one other thing I'll make just comment on as far as the physical edition. If you get the physical edition from Old Dominion Game Works, you also get access to the digital files. Now, if you buy this somewhere else, it should come with a page that has, I won't necessarily show mine, but it's got a piece of paper that comes with it. It talks about updates and has a registration code. So if you buy this from someplace other than them, because they have a store and you can buy that, if it comes with that registration page, you should be able to get access to your digital files. Now, I did read somewhere that someone bought the General Quarters rules once from a different website. They reached out into the forums and they worked something out and they were able to get access to the digital files. So that's the one thing I would recommend, is just get the physical book, then you get access to the digital files. You can buy just digital files in case the shipping or something just makes that not worth it to you. But if you're able to, definitely get the physical copy, then you get access to the digital files. Which is fun because while I waited for the game to arrive in the physical format, I was able to print off some things and start learning how to play. Now, I will say this, that they are a small company. And I'm only going to point this out, it is part of the review because it goes to something that happened. When I ordered this, I received no shipping information whatsoever. And it was like several days later, I was wondering, if it was on the way or not. And I'd say probably like 2 weeks in, I reached out to ODGW. And I didn't get a response because I was seeing if they could maybe give me a shipping or tracking info. But the game did arrive, and then a couple days after the game arrived, I got an email from them saying they would look into it and see where my game was. And then a couple days after that, they said, oh, we found your tracking information, here it is, but it shows your game's already delivered. So that's the only criticism I have for ordering from them. I don't know what it's like if you order the rules from someplace else. It's just they do respond, they're very friendly, they do help. It's just sometimes there's a bit of a delay. So as long as you're aware of that, then I think you'll be just fine. Because same thing goes with asking questions on the forum. Very professional, very polite. They always respond. But just be aware it can take a couple of days. But if that's one reason I want to share these rule sets out, because I think they're really good. So the more folks I can get involved with them and purchasing things and help grow that community, then actually it becomes easier for them to get responses out and whatnot, because there's community support. So that's my hope, at least. But I want to share with you some things that I find very, very exciting about the rules and why I'm going to the trouble of sharing them out. Alright, so first things first. How did I learn about this? Well, I forgot that I'll just call them ODGW, ODG. I forgot that they make other rule sets besides the World War II rules. They have a World War I Dreadnought rules. They've got World War II ground warfare. They have like a Napoleonics rule set. They've got a little bit of everything, and I completely forgot that they had other stuff. So one day I was searching through the old Facebook, and someone had posted pictures, and I said, wow, some of that kind of looks like General Quarters, but it's Age of Sail. So I went back and was like, yeah, I totally forgot that they do other rule sets. And this is just after I got into Black Seas. And Black Seas is a great beer and pretzels game, but I remember these folks as the kind of simulationist side of things. Plus, since I was already familiar with General Quarters 3, I said, hey, let's look into this. So I might have to timestamp past the talking part, because I just realized it's like 5 minutes of me talking about stuff, and I haven't even shown you the game. So let's jump into that right now. Alright, so some of the things I printed off. First of all, they have a weather. I'm just going to go through a few items. So if this seems out of order, just bear with it, because they were here. But this is stuff I got off the digital file. So there's a weather chart, and this is actually pretty important because this can affect the game. One of the things that you check for if you're rolling up scenarios or battles is you can check for the weather, how strong the weather, how strong the wind, and that's important because that will affect what type of sails you can use. And if you're using, say, like full sails, meaning all your sails are out and there's really strong weather, you could damage the rigging and parts of your ship because it's not designed to have all those sails out when the weather's really bad. So if you are thinking of things that should be in an Age of Sail game, they're probably in here, such as varying weather effects, and pretty detailed, and it goes in and tell you specifically how those weather effects can affect the different rated ships. So nice level of detail there. Then on the back, setting up, again, just rolling on some various things to help set up your missions, wind direction, and a few other things, grounding damage, and whatnot. So that's one thing they're always good at, is having nice charts, lots of good information. There are a couple things you could print out. This is one. It's actually like 2 pages. It was a good game summary. They also have another page which is a little more summarized. So if you have those summary pages, you can actually play quite a bit of the game. Here's what the ship logs look like. This is something I always look for in Age of Sail games, is what are the ship logs like. This is just part of your ship log. I'm going to show you the rest of your ship data cards that go with this, but we'll look at this in a little more detail. But your ship logs that you get, again, with you can track 2 ships per page here. So this is not a large scale kind of game. I think probably I would feel comfortable running 4 ships. Maybe if I got real familiar with the rules, I could do more. But it can be a lot of data to track. So I've always felt comfortable with General Quarters running 3 to 4 ships. Now, if you've got a lot of people playing, then each of them can run several ships. So you could run big battles, but for one person, you know, comfortably 3 to 4 ships. Boarding party action. So this is awesome. Printed this off. So pretty detailed on that. You know, the ships will line up on the table, then you set these off to the side and you can track the boarding parties, where you're attacking on the ship to try and control the deck. So it's like a mini game for that, which I thought was cool. Here's the other page of the turn sequence. Then this is just real briefly an example of one of the ship data cards. My son and I were kind of playing, so I printed that off. I got another one here for the British ship that he was fighting, but we'll look at that here in a second. So again, just some things I printed off, some things that came with it. Now here's some stuff that came with the physical book. Again, here was like a signal chart, so you could actually, if you were playing like a refereed game, you could actually send private signals to your teammates and things, and they'd have to interpret what it says. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then this was tracking gunboats. And then here's that 2-page turn sequence that they have, but they got it on one heavy card stock. The Gunnery CRT. I have one printed out, but I think I left it in the other room. But this is the one that comes with the game. So we'll take a look at the Gunnery CRT. And then it's got boarding party, night detection rules, tacking, cutting free. So again, a lot of things you would expect from an Age of Sail game they've got here. Here's the weather table that they provided, again on a nice laminated kind of heavy cardstock. And then this is the boarding party that they came out with. So it's got nice glossy compared to what I printed out. So that's just a few things that I had laying off to the side here. So the rules themselves are, if you're familiar with their books at all, lots of information, 2 columns. It's not a lot of color pictures or anything like that. It's not a glossy type of thing like an Osprey books or something like that. But this gets down to the meat and potatoes. Now, the first part of this book has, like an introduction to it. It mentions some miniatures companies you could get maybe stuff from. Right here, equipment tells you about the different charts that come with it. Describes the playing area, talks a little bit about the ship data cards, examples of ships that you could get. And this is definitely more geared, I think, towards the smaller scale stuff like the 1/2400 or the 1/1200, things like that. These Black Seas ones are 1/700, which at the time of these rules weren't really covered here in that area. But I will say this though, going back to the customer service and how they respond, one of the questions I asked was what, can I play this with the Black Seas ships? And the response I got was yes. In fact, they even told me which of the included measuring sticks, scales to grab, and then how much to enlarge it so you get that 1-to-1 ratio. So what I mean is they didn't have specifically a rule set printed in the 1/700 scale, but he said and I forget what it was, but he said if you took like the 1/1200 scale here, for example, and then enlarged it by like 161% or something like that when you printed it, that would give you an appropriate size ruler for measuring your distances and things like that with the 107 scale ships. So again, they're very friendly and they do answer your questions and help you out. You just got to be patient with getting your response. Alright, so back to the book. It has what I would say basic rules, the medium rules, and then like advanced rules. It's in 3 parts. So the first set of rules, this is actually goes very in depth into the idea of sailing. Now, how accurate it is to, I've never sailed in real life, right? So I'm reading a lot of the stuff, I'm going, oh, that's interesting. So there's a lot of information about the different types of sails, square rigs, fore-aft rigs, cutters, schooners, kind of what those terms mean and how they got that name. And then it talks about the how they track the ship data for that, like your sail speed. And I'll show you on the data cards how they do that. So this goes into, I would say pretty in depth in how to track your ship's movement, which is, what we're looking for. Then it goes into how you sail, basically how you measure your speed against your wind angle, which we'll talk about in a moment. It's very clever what they do. And then it goes into like your tacking and wearing and the gunnery, and several pages on that, your arc of fire, if you can do raking shots and things like that, how you track your damage, the small arms, so you can do like musketry, repairs on specific parts of your ship, damage effects, drifting, collisions, running aground, boarding party actions. What else they got here? Boats, how to use your boats for different things, or the small gunnery boats, morale, signals that we talked about if you wanted to send signals to your teammates, fleet actions, weather effects, prize crews for capturing merchant vessels, things like that, victory conditions of your scenarios, how to set up your scenario, and that's all part 1. So, everything that you need just to get going is covered very well in part 1. And even if you just read the basic movement and gunnery, that's enough to get you started, and then slowly add in the other parts. And then part 2 has got extended tasks. So this is kind of cool too. There are things that you can do that they take several turns. They have a whole code system to use to track different things. So it talks about that more in depth. Anyway, it goes on. There's additional things, leeway, kedging, I don't know, stuff that I haven't even looked at yet, just because the basics are working out for me so well. Shore defenses, what else we got here in the night actions, night signals, cutting out, whatever that means. Part 3, shore raids, so a whole section on shore raids, dropping off your Marines, seeing if they can capture stuff, getting them to and from shore, even using your ship combat arc tools, it looks like here, so you can do some ground actions. So if you drop your Marines off, they got a little bit of rules for doing ground combat, which is pretty neat too. So it's like a complete rule system covering a lot of aspects here of Age of Sail. Quite a bit. Wow, I didn't even realize at first. And probably if you had their other rules set and some other things, you can incorporate that too, because they do have kind of a Napoleonic rules, so I can see how you could combine those two sets to make like big epic games. So again, just lots of stuff. So here, then as we get to the back, we're taking a look here at the deck logs again that they have, and then the ships. The ships are great. They do remind me a lot of their World War II ship data cards, except they are tailor-made for Age of Sail. So just to point out a few things for you, up here is a section on your sails. Now the sails are tracked where the black, these are your battle sails. And the battle sails just basically represent the most sail that you would want to have when you're conducting combat operations to prevent extra damage from rigging hits and whatnot. So it's enough to move the ship, but not necessarily put a lot of strain on the ship while you're doing maneuvers. Then you can, and then if you notice here, each little sail has a number. So if you're going at the battle sail, which is tracked down here, so basically right down here you have your battle sails, easy sail, and full sail. And what they've done is they put a number in each of these sails. Each of these squares represents a sail on the ship. So the black outlines represent your battle sails. So this is very cool because as you take damage to masts or specific sails, you could slowly start to whittle away what your movement points are. So if I specifically lost a blue sail up here, well, if I was going to sail it easy, meaning I've got more sails deployed, I wouldn't hit 9 movement factors because I was missing one of the sails. So it's a simple way, but yet it allows you to track some specific sails of your ship. That kind of the detail, which I kind of like, but it's not complicated. So if I was going to do full sails, that means all the sails are deployed. You could add up all the numbers in the boxes, or it's right down here for you. But again, if I was to take some damage to some of these sails, then I wouldn't be able to have that full movement factor. I could adjust that number. Here's a spot for marking your crew. Yeah, so this is even cool. You can track your crew. So it's got a spot here on your sheet where you can put your initial crew numbers and then just modify, not necessarily per turn or per phase as you play, but as you hit maybe certain milestones of damage or crew assignments, they have a couple columns you can use to track how you've got your crews deployed. Because as you lose men, it takes men to man the guns, it takes men to sail the ship, change the sails. So as you start to lose crew people, these extra boxes kind of let you adjust where you've put your priorities. So for example, right here, this 2 green circles that are underlined, that's the minimum crews needed to run yourself at battle sails, like just to sail the ship. So over here, when you're doing your crew assignment, the sail trim, you just mark down that you've got like 2 crew factors. And then it's got rules for how to assign for all the different, who's manning the lower guns, the mid guns, the upper guns, or the light guns like the carronades and things like that. Who's manning the pumps, who's been assigned to repair, things like that. So it has a lot of depth, but it's not overly complicated to track. The tools that they give you to track that are all visually represented very, very well. It's even got where you can track your Marines for boarding party actions. You can even use your Marines, if you lost a lot of crew, you could use your Marines to reinforce the gun firing. They are not as effective at it, so it takes more Marines to replace lost crew. And then the ships itself, whole boxes, a spot to mark your quality of crew, and then it's got your gun data. So this is where some of it looks real similar to the General Quarters World War II stuff. It's got all your gunnery data here. Now there's no armor, right? It's just wooden ships. So it just simply says like this is a third-rate ship. Here's how many cannons it's got. So when I'm like looking at scenario creation, sometimes it's kind of easy to just go, okay, 74 guns versus a 74 gun, third rate versus third rate ship. Those should be pretty balanced. And then you have here the name right there in the middle. And then right here, this section is the guns that you have. So the big heavy guns, this is the way I read it from the book. The heavier guns are on the very bottom deck of the ship. So these are the bottom guns, and then these are like the mid-deck guns. And then it's got here in red, looks like a couple chaser cannons. So these are marked in red, and those are carronades. So the C is a carronade. So this ship has like a couple of carronades in the back. The way they're marked, there should be that. I think that just represents one. These are single carronades there, whereas if it's in a box, that represents groups of 3. So this particular ship on this side, on the starboard side, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gun boxes of about 3 guns each. So of these 32-pounder guns, that's 15 guns, and then 15 guns on the mid deck. So that's like 30 there, and then 30 on that side. And then you add in your carronades, and eventually you can see how it adds up to having 74 guns. So again, the math isn't overly complicated, so I think the black circle represents a group of 3 carronades. So let's see how good the math is. So if this is 30 guns, that's 36, 36 and 36 is 72. Add the individual carronades on the back, and that's your 74 guns. You got anchors you could lose, the pumps to help pump out water as you start to take damage and flood, B for boats that you could deploy. So again, looks like a lot of information, but is very easy to track, and then as you take damage, you just mark it off. So those are some of the things that you get with the game. And there's quite a few ships here. You also get included the measuring templates. I just printed them off because I always feel bad about cutting up the stuff the company sends, but you do get things scaled for 1/2400 or the 1/1200. Then I originally printed off, and I have them actually here. They did have some stuff in 1/1000, which I first used with my 1/700 scale ships, but the way the game plays, they end up moving across the table in no time flat, so I scaled down to the 1/1200. But again, the way the game plays, I might even try playing my 1/700 scale ships with the 1/2400 scaled items, and I'll show you why here in just a second. Let's see some more templates, and then here's the gunnery chart that I printed out. Let's move some stuff off to the side here. And what I did here was off to the side, I just measured in inches. So the gunnery chart comes at you in yards. And depending on your scale, like I'm trying the 1/1200 scale game, which means 100 yards is about 3 inches. So I just put inches over here next to the yardage. That way I don't have to do math all the time. I just measure, and the same thing with the carronade ranges. So now I can just measure with my tape measure, and then just look at the chart real quick. But that's nice because this is kind of a universal. See, unlike the World War II game where you had a gunnery chart for each nation, this is one gunnery chart that fits everybody, because a 32-pounder gun is a 32-pounder gun. And just by reading some of the history, there's a lot of things that were just standardized across all nations, because the sailing ships, the Age of Sail, these huge ships, the man-of-wars, there just got to be a point where they couldn't progress them much more. The technology just kind of limited them and what they could do with wood. That's why eventually you've got the ironclads, and then you moved on to dreadnoughts and stuff. But where they were with the Age of Sail and just all wooden ships, there was almost just the standardized that everybody had. So this gunnery chart works for everybody. And then you got the damage here. So the way the gunnery chart works is pretty easy. So once you measure your range, you're going to take a look where you are. So right here, for instance, there's 3 to 6 inches. If I measured at 5 inches, I just look here, that falls between the 3 and the 6, and you're just going to look on the next scale up, because 5 inches is more than 3 inches but less than 6. So you just go to the next higher. The thing is, though, that doesn't give a whole lot of scale, if you will. So there's not a whole lot of difference between shooting at 1,000 yards or 900 yards. There's not a lot of granularity there. And I guess cannonballs, because they're just not very accurate, it makes kind of sense. That's why the games in the Age of Sail, you got to get close. So this definitely, your odds of if hitting and doing damage increases significantly as you get these ships really close together. And that's all represented on this chart. So what you do is, by looking at your ship card, you look to see the poundage of the gun that you're firing. So like, here's a 24-pounder gun, and let's say I'm shooting it at another 5th rate. So I look here for a 24-pounder gun. Well, first I want to find if it's a 5th rate. So this has 1st through 3rd rate ships. You go by the target. So if I'm shooting at a 4th and 5th rate ship, I come across till I find the 24-pounder gun, and then I cross-reference that with the range, and then this tells me a number, like a range, 1 through 4. I got to roll one 12-sided die for each box, because that represents a grouping of 3 guns. So you're going to have 12-sided dice, just like the World War II game, and you roll. But this is actually a lot different than the World War II. The World War II game, it felt like it was hard to hit, because you either hit on 1s or maybe hit on a 1 and 2. Most a 1 through 3. The difference it was, if you had to roll or hit on a 1 through 3 and you rolled a 3, that did count as 3 hits. What they've done here is they've increased the range to hit. So here it says 1 through 6, so you roll 5 dice, that's like a 50% chance of hitting with each of those dice. So it's just a little bit different way of saying how many times you can hit. So they just increased the range of numbers that you have to roll to hit. So if you get really close, 1 through 8. If you're 50 yards away, you're hitting on 1 through 9. So very hard to miss. Then here, this was something I had to ask on the forums to get clarification. So the half, if you are far enough away that it's a half, that means you roll half the dice round down to shoot at your target. So for example, if I was rolling 5 dice, because I had 5, well, this is 4. So let's say I had 4 gun block boxes I'm rolling for, but I'm at a range where I only get to roll for half, then I only roll 2 dice. That's easy. Now if I'm using a single gun, like if I had here's a single gun up front, single long gun, I would roll 1 die for that. But if it's at the half, because I'm really far away, then half of 1 rounded down is 0. So I couldn't shoot that 1 gun. So the groups are just a tad bit more accurate. Then, in some situations, you might only hit on odd numbers. So if I was going to be rolling and hitting on 1 through 3, but I'm only hitting on odds for certain conditions, usually with the single guns, they hit on odds. That means that single gun would only hit on the 1 or a 3. It wouldn't hit on a 1, 2, or 3. So that's in the rules, but the way my brain works, I just needed to explain it in a little bit different verbiage. But now the gunnery chart, no problem. And then if you see the number or the letters here like PRG, try to remember those are specific things. Rigging, P was something, R is something else. I think R was rigging, G, but G is a gun. So that corresponds down here. So again, if it's in the red letters at 800 yards, it means when that shot hits, it's only going to actually do damage if it rolls specifically. And I forgot what the P was, but I think R was for rigging and then G was a gun. So like if you hit the hole, it wouldn't damage it. I totally forget what P was. Maybe that was people, crew, I think. But anyway, it is actually pretty easy once you kind of got this basic gunnery chart down. Then once you hit, or you have how many hits you have, you just roll. Now they got this little handy dandy chart modifier. If you roll on the up roll, that means you're shooting up towards the rigging. So you're going to cross-reference your rolls here, because this gives you more rigging hits if you up roll. Down roll gives you more hits towards the hull and the bottom of the ship. So again, things that you would expect to find in a lot of Age of Sail games, but easily represented here. So if I had my 2 hits, I would just roll 2 dice, roll a 12 on the down is a critical, then I would just roll in a critical hit chart, and it would just tell me specifically if I, chains, mark off 4 rigging boxes, or hold floods next to hull boxes. But it's got rules for, if you destroy a certain amount of rigging, then potentially you could lose a mast, and how that would affect your sailing, and as you take crew casualties, lose guns. So a lot of complex items, but handled very, very simply. So I really like the system in the combat. Moving is just as easy. The way that works, let's borrow this ship right here. Now, we played a game my friend introduced me to. It had a fairly complex movement system. I liked it because it kind of really made me think about moving with the wind. So you had a little template you would hold over the ship in relation to the north, and then how the wind was blowing, so you could see if you were like chasing or in irons, and how that would affect you. Then you had to know the wind state, then you had to know your sail state, and based on a chart you were looking at, if you were like in rears or chasing, quarter chasing or something, I forget the terms, but you would look at that, you know, column of like, okay, I'm you know, the wind's blowing this way on me, and the wind state is this, and my sail state is this. You look on a chart, and you cross-reference, and it says this is how many millimeters you move, and if you turn the ship, because there's 2 movement segments, then for the second movement segment, you got to recalculate based on what the new facing is. So you have to do some like pre-plotting in your head to kind of guesstimate how the ship is moving, and it was kind of fun. But there was like a lot of little pieces to it. So when I read Post Captain, I was like, okay, how are they going to handle it? And they handle it really, really easy. Now they got these 2 turn kind of wind gauges, and one is for square rigged ships, which is what most of your Age of Sail ships are, like the big ships are the square. And then this was like for merchants. It says that fore and aft rigs is what that's for. So based on the type of ship, you use the corresponding wind gauge. Then they have it for, there's 2 of them. One is for if the wind is hitting the ship on the starboard side, and one is if the wind is hitting on, oh, you just flip it, if the wind is hitting on the port side. So let's say my wind is coming this way. So what I do is, since I know it's hitting on the port side of the ship, I take the wind gauge, if you will, line the bow towards the front, and what you do is you then rotate this so it matches the direction that the wind is coming in. So if the wind is coming in this way, you just line the arrow up, put this on about the middle mast, and it tells you medium, fast, medium, or slow. So depending on how into the wind you're facing, that will tell you if you get to move fast, medium, or slow. So if this was the way the wind was blowing, that's the way the wind is, ship is facing, then I know I'm moving fast. I mean, it's real easy, but it takes all that math away, but gives you that importance of tracking you're facing towards the wind. I mean, it's real easy. I don't have to do any overlays or guesswork or math. You just lay it down, boom, fast. How that translates over to this move marker is they then have a slow side, medium, fast. So again, if this example was, it showed my ship was moving in the fast column with the wind, and I've got my sails, battle sail of 7, that's how many movement factors I get. I then just go, okay, fast, side of the ruler, F for fast, line it up somewhere on the ship, and move out 7 movement factors. Boom. So easy, but yet it accounts for all those factors of, you know, your angle to the wind. Is great, but so easy to do and fun and quick. Now that's important because when you have your ships out beyond like 1,000 yards from each other, you're going to move in essentially expanded movement. So the game, when you get really close, it takes the turn and breaks it down into 3 segments. But when you're really far away, you move all your 3 movement segments at one time, and that's to compress time, right? So if our ships are at opposite sides of the table, and I have a movement factor of 7, I theoretically could move my ship up to 21 movement factors, and then my opponent could move up to 21 movement factors. That's just that compression of scale of time. Once the ships get closer, you then start rolling for initiative to see who moves, and then at some point, the turn goes from just one long turn into these 3 segments, a red, white, and blue segment. And that's actually, I think, really, really good, because now that's when you get down and you start really worrying about the maneuvering of your ships. So you can mark down, like your movement factors that you're going to have in the different segments, which is tracked up here, your battle speeds for reminders. Because what's nice is it's not pre-plotted movement. So if you ever played the World War II rules and you had to pre-plot all your movement, here there's no pre-plotting. It's like free-form movement. So once you get your ships close enough, you roll off to see who has initiative. And if you have initiative, then you might say, okay, for the red phase, I'm going to move, my 7 segments, and I'm going to turn. And then that's where you have a turn gauge. So as you turn, you have to expend movement factors on each of these segments. You have to move a certain amount of distance forward first to break the inertia of traveling, and then make your turn. And it's all kind of on the fly. And I like that because it lets you react to your opponent and see what they're going to do, and then help you determine how you want to line your ship up to get those nice broadside shots. And then since there's 3 phases, you each do your red phase. Once all the ships have moved in the red phase, you could fire. And then this is where extended actions come in, and they got these boxes to track stuff. Like, for example, if you fire, certain nations reload their cannons faster than other nations. So if you fire, and I fired off they call larboard side, but like the port side, left side, L for left, you would just simply mark out, like, put an X. So if I fired in the red phase, I would put an X in the white and blue phase to show that I'm reloading. If I was like British or American, they only take 2 phases to reload. And then it's got it for each side of the ship, because did you fire your port side guns, or did you fire the starboard side guns? So there's again some complexity there, but the tools they give you to track it just makes it all flow pretty easily. The only reason why I was saying you'd want to maybe run 3 or 4 ships at the most is just because, again, there is a lot to track. And for one person to have to track all that starts to become a little overwhelming, but it can be done. Can be done. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just kind of what your comfort level is. So, wow, there's a lot there. And that's only touching the basic aspects, right? Just a little bit of movement and a little bit of gunnery. Like I said, they have all kinds of stuff, like the boarding parties. If the ships not necessarily collide, but get close enough that they become entangled with each other, how do they untangle? Shore batteries and repairs. Now I can assign crews to repair if I need to, or they can, reload. Like, one thing is you can fire all your guns on the starboard side, then those same gun crews, they go over and they can fire guns on the larboard side. But in order to reload, those same gun crews have to reload both sides. So then you have to kind of gauge, okay, am I reloading or am I firing both sides? So there's a little bit of resource management with the game as well. But again, it's all handled in ways that the tracking pages really help you accomplish that. Boy, that's a lot. But I'm hoping that tells you a little bit about the game and kind of gets you curious about, maybe picking this up for yourself. I've played this a few times, again, just kind of going along with basics, just the movement and gunnery, and it is fun. And the ships are tough. It really takes a lot of shots to take something down. I'd say that's the only thing is, when you have 3 phases, sometimes it feels like they give you down here to track out to 27 turns and 3 phases in each turn. Sometimes that can feel like it takes forever to play one game of just a couple of ships. So that's probably the only thing. This is not a quick play rules. This is like getting into the nitty-gritties of managing your one ship. And I like that because it makes you really concerned about that one ship. So if you're looking for something that lets you do Trafalgar, yeah, you might want to look at a more large-scale rule set. But if you want something that really lets you manage that 2 or 3 ships or 4 ships a person, then I think this is outstandingly fun. It really gets you in there. You're worried about your crews. You're worried about what they're doing. You're worried about who's reloading. And one thing I think I will point out, though, that I thought was interesting is there's not a section in here that says here's special rules for the British, here's special rules for Spain, or anything like that. Special rules, if anything, are kind of baked into the ship sheets themselves. And what I mean by that, and this is what I thought was interesting, is the British has the fewest crew members available to other nations. And just reading a little bit about the Age of Sail in general, was Britain was known to have like the best ships, but because they're a smaller nation, they had fewer people that they could spread among all those ships. So for them, crew casualties are even more devastating than, say, to other nations. So a lot of times there's no real special rules necessarily per nation, but those quirks are built into the ship cards. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing. So this, like I said, there's a lot of detail in here without necessarily coming right out and saying, hey, here's the detail. But it's easily tracked and it's visually represented really, really well. Okay, well, that's Post Captain, a huge overview. If you took the time to watch all this, I super appreciate that. If you've played Post Captain, please share your thoughts on that. If you have an Age of Sail rule set that you really enjoy, please tell me about it. I'll try and check it out. I'm always happy to learn other rule sets, so share whatever you have. And with that, I'll talk to y'all later. Thanks a lot.